What's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. Just making a short video. Gonna talk about the panic that's starting to set in Mexico. Now, most of my viewers probably know Mexico is more and more not giving out 180-day visas or tourist cards on arrival where you get 180 days. Not always, but mostly and in general. And the latest video I saw from Tangerine Travels, they're pretty reliable. They just put out a video, or he put out a video, where if you fly into Mexico, they're now asking you to have hotel reservations for all the days you're going to be in Mexico. So if you only have reservations for 2 or 3 days, they're only giving you a visa for 2 or 3 days. Now, I didn't verify that. I'm just going by what I'm hearing, what people are saying. I don't know when I'll be in Mexico, and I'm hoping that does not happen to me. Anyways, so then they're saying you need to get a residency, which is problematic. And Tangerine Travel talked about this, why it's problematic. For one thing, they just raised the requirements, so it's a lot harder to get the residency. By harder, I mean you got to get a lot of documents. You might have to go to the United States. You have to fly halfway across Mexico to go to a consulate to get an appointment, because the consulate where you may be at won't have an appointment for a year or two, because everyone's running to get a residency. It's become a lot more difficult to get the appointments to do all the stuff you got to do. And another thing he pointed out, which I know has always been true, is he called it consulates, but every consulate has different requirements. It's not like one rule across all of Mexico like many people will tell you. I mean, in theory, that's supposed to be the way it is, but in practice, like in one consulate, they'll say you need $2,600 a month. Another one might say $1,800. Now, when they say that, a lot of times, like say you only have $1,800 that you can prove income or from bank statements, you can make up the rest by having a bank account, kind of like what they do in Thailand. But it really comes down to the individual immigration person. From all the people I know who've gotten residency, in some cases, I don't know how to put this, but they'll just assume all your paperwork is correct. So if it looks right, they don't like verify it or nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. So it really depends which immigration person you talk to. Anyhow, what this has caused is a big mess where a lot of gringos who coming in and out of the country, they don't ever get a legal status as far as a residency. They're now not being allowed in the country as long as they want. They're now in panic mode. And people are talking about the consequences of it. Probably if they keep doing this, they're kind of doing what Thailand's doing. Thailand is making it really difficult to stay there. So a lot of foreigners have been leaving Thailand. Now the same thing maybe happening in Mexico. I don't know. We'll have to watch how things unfold. But as of right now, before I was kind of poo-pooing it, like, because this never happened to me, and I just crossed the border a couple months ago, and I came in from the United States, and they gave me 180 days. Now I'm going to go back to Mexico, see what happens. If I can't really get a visa to travel across the country, maybe I'll have to fly home or whatever. Anyways, I don't know what to make of it. Tangerine Travels was talking about maybe the consequences of all this, where they'll get a lot less digital nomads. They'll get a lot less retirees from like Mexico and Canada. I mean, from the United States and Canada. Another thing he did mention that I've kind of mentioned a little bit, and I get a lot of pushback for saying this and a lot of skepticism, but they're asking you for a lot of financial documents and stuff like that. And we're now living in what I call the digital age, where there's no more privacy unless you go out of your way to set things up so people can't know what you have. Well, all this digital information is shared by various governments. So you better make sure when you fill out all this paperwork, if you are lying, realize this information could be transferred to other governments who ask for it, and you could have trouble with your tax authorities when you fly back to your favorite country. Also, too, I would just add, I'm not saying this is common, but sometimes your information is shared with like people who would want to hurt you or kidnap you, things like that. That's one reason why I would never keep large amounts of money visibly in my name in Mexico and in Mexico banks. And I would also say this just doesn't apply to Mexico. This happens in Latin America quite a bit. People set up a bank account in their name, they put a lot of money in, and next thing you know, they get robbed when they come out of the bank. because it's probably the teller or the bank manager, someone in the bank contacting somebody, and then they rob you. That's another thing with this loss of privacy in not just the first world, but all over the world now, but mostly in the first world. But now it's coming to everywhere. You need to be really cautious, and you can't just slip through the cracks like you used to. Well, you can, but it's getting more and more difficult. Now, what do I think about all this? I don't know. I don't know why it's happening. At first, I thought maybe it's because the U.S. is putting a lot of pressure on Mexico for these illegal immigrants, and they're pushing back by making it hard for Americans and Canadians and Europeans to come in, like retaliating. Maybe, I don't know if that would really, doesn't make sense to me, but that's just something I thought. Don't know how realistic that thought is. But here's what I think, just as a general statement. More and more countries are going to do like Mexico, Thailand, and many other countries. They're going to make it much, much more difficult for middle-class people to get a legal residency, to legally get out of the tax net, to legally get out of first world countries. And that's my opinion. A lot of people have been pushing back against that and saying I'm wrong and things are going to go back to normal. But I don't really think so. I've seen more and more like Thai bloggers talking about how they may leave. I'm seeing a lot more Thai bloggers talking about how no one really wants to go there and how, well, people want to go there, but how they're making it difficult for people to legally live there unless they're very, very wealthy. I think Mexico may be trying to do that. I'm not really sure. But what I think is more and more countries are going to make it difficult for you to get a legal residence so you can escape the tax net, escape the regulatory net, things like that. I also think it's not all dark and gloomy like some people suggest. I think there will be places opening up in the world. El Salvador may be one of them. But there's going to be places in the Pacific, Pacific Islands. There's going to be places in Latin America. And I would guess maybe one or two places in Eastern Europe. And maybe a few places in South America where I won't say it'll be super easy like before in the past, but it'll be relatively easy to get tourist visas or some kind of student visa or some kind of retiree visa or some kind of investment visa and live in the country. I'm saying all that because in the past, in some countries, if you just invest $20,000 or $30,000, you could get an investment visa and be on your way. That is going to go up. Some people say like Brazil is like 200,000, but I think it's more at the discretion of the immigration officer. Because I am aware of a few people spending 20,000 or less and got it. That doesn't mean I claim you can. I'm just saying it's possible. But a lot of things like in Latin America depend on who is looking at your application, how they interpret the rules, whether they like you or not, whether they want you in the country. That's what it comes down to in the end, is whether they really want you there. And I think more and more countries don't really want gringos coming into the country, especially the less affluent ones. And I think this may be part of it. Another part of it will be the EU and the United States and a few like Canada, Australia doesn't really like their most productive people fleeing the country and not paying tax anymore and not being part of the system. I think this is a behind the scenes move they could be doing to try to cut off that flow of capital and people leaving the country. As a matter of fact, if you know much about the U.S., there's been a huge migration from high tax states to low tax states. I won't get into all the various states, but people are just fleeing high tax northeast states and fleeing the west coast towards the central part of the country, like in the Texas and Florida region. Just to be kind of more specific, a lot of venture capital is going to Florida. Some is going to Texas. In the past, it would have mostly went to Texas, so I'm kind of surprised it's going to Florida, but it is going to Florida. Florida and Wyoming and Texas are making more and more state tax laws and regulatory laws to make it easier and more desirable for not just foreign capital to flow in from Latin America, but for capital from the other states to flow in and for people to move there. Anyways, that's it for now. I don't have much to say about it. I don't really know what to say. I'll give my viewers my opinions when I go to Mexico to see what's going on. If it really is that tough, if they really are asking you to prove a hotel every single day you're there and show your airplane ticket if you're flying out of Mexico City to somewhere else, or you're going back to the States or whatever. So far, I haven't come into any of that. Usually I come across and they give me 180 tourist card visa, or whatever you want to call it. And I've only gotten 30 days one time in life, and that was back in my 20s. So it will be interesting to see how it goes. But I'm starting to see more and more videos where people are panicking. They're not going to make Mexico their plan B destination unless they're going to get a residency. And there's pluses and minuses of residency. There's just, if it's easy for you to go there and get a visa, I would get it. I would get one. It's one of the, in my opinion, one of the better countries to earn a living, start a business, and do what you want to do. And it's a huge country. There's huge regions. There's difference in different regions from Yucatan to the Pacific Coast. I prefer the West Coast, Pacific Coast, but there's just, the colonial towns where it's much, much cooler. And then there's the lowland areas. And even in southern Mexico, if you get into Oaxaca on the beaches, it's not quite as developed there and quite a bit cheaper, as a matter of fact. Anyways, because of the variation in various regions and cost of living, even certain parts of the country are kind of closer to the U.S. kind of prices, and even the wages are kind of close to what U.S. wages are. And then there's southern Mexico in the east, where it's a lot less. So the wages are more like, I would say, Central America, and the cost of living is more like Central America. But anyways, I'm not sure what to make of this, but I am kind of sensing the fear because I've seen more and more videos coming out where people might be leaving and going somewhere else, and they're a little bit upset that Mexico has changed the rules. I'm not really sure why this is. I really would like people's opinions, what they think's going on. Personally, I think the whole world is closing down for tourism. A lot of the countries don't really want, I don't think this has anything to do with the coronavirus. They want to shut things down. And yeah, I'll just put it out there. Many first world countries want a more authoritarian climate and regime, and they want to cut off the flow of human capital and just regular capital from leaving the country. And I realize it's more complicated than that, but I think that's what it's coming down to. Anyway, that's it for now. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you.